In the moments after 4 jetliners crashed on September 11th, all airspace over the United States was shut down, diverting thousands of flights around the world. NBC's Bob Dotson now on the kindness of strangers in one community who took in hundreds of passengers unable to return home.
Life in Newfoundland can be as hard as the weather. Temperatures dipping 20 below. Unemployment in some villages hovering as high as 50%. But this remote island in the North Atlantic, Canada's poorest province, has set a mark for giving worthy of the history books. It began last September 11th when pilots were told to put their planes on the ground as soon as possible.
Reach 8901 Yankee, roger.
38 jets with more than 6,000 passengers ended up in Gander, Newfoundland.
2 American Airlines planes were hijacked. Both were crashed into the 2 World Trade Center buildings and were destroyed. Both buildings are rubble. Yes,
Rubble?
Thousands are dead and wounded.
School bus drivers were on strike back then, but they left their picket lines and worked 24 hours straight to take the stranded travelers to nearby towns.
You're all going to the same destination? You're going to the same place in Lewisporte, so you'll...
Passengers thought they were being dropped off at the end of the earth, but they couldn't have been made to feel more at home. Churches took in those who could not find hotel rooms. Travelers, anxious to know about events, found
they had a television set. They had actually put cable everywhere that the passengers were going to be.
The tiny coastal town of Lewisporte canceled classes so their visitors could use school computers to send messages home. Since luggage was still locked on the planes, passengers were given coins to wash their clothes at the laundromat. Those who needed prescriptions were taken to pharmacies for free medicine, while townspeople worked through the night, baking them fresh bread. Lloyd George, a Salvation Army pastor, had called all his neighbors to help.
How many people did you have here?
We had 176 in the total church, but we had 2 on each pew.
So, did you have any newlyweds on the planes?
Yeah, just up in the loft. Yeah, they crept away, and God bless them. They had their own honeymoon suite, which is good.
If the passengers had simply stayed in those churches until their planes were ready to leave, there wouldn't be much of a story. Lots of towns help in times of crisis. But the people of Lewisporte pulled the travelers out, took them around the bay in their boats, and then invited those strangers into their homes.
Put some water there.
Susan and Trevor Tetford took in 2 New York City couples with babies.
And they wanted to have milk for their babies. And Trevor and I, my husband, just looked at me and we thought, you know, it would be much better if they could just go home.
Their home. Elizabeth Rosso couldn't believe her good fortune.
I felt like I was in the home of my family, and they made us feel that way.
Trevor tossed his keys to a total stranger.
6 hours later, I was driving his car.
Okay, I took it.
Recently, the Rossos returned the kindness. They invited the Tetfords to see New York City and stay with them.
You picture big city people, and you think they're so different than yourself. But when we just sat around and chatting for a while, you realize that they were much like myself. Different experiences, but yet I think the bottom line was that we were human beings. We cared about each other, and that was it.
They've become close friends, even though they were together only 3 days during that terrible week in September.
Good, how are you?
Lots of people in Lewisporte, like Thelma Hooper, still get calls from their newfound friends.
Thelma.
Shirley Brooks Jones, who stayed in Thelma's house last September, recently told her some amazing news. When Shirley's Delta flight flew on to Atlanta, passengers passed the hat. 218 ordinary people pledged $15,000 to start a scholarship fund for Lewisporte's children. In the 6 months since, they've added 20,000 more.
Some of these students weren't going to have many opportunities, not because they weren't loved, not because their parents didn't want them, you know, but because of the circumstances in the community.
In a world so full of changes, one thing stays the same. We all want peace and harmony, so help us light the flame.
1/4 of the children who start school in Lewisporte do not graduate high school. So the money will be used as an incentive, awarded not just to a star student or 2, but divided among every senior who makes straight A's.
Build a bridge of peace and harmony.
All this happened just because some people in a faraway place were kind to strangers. For today, Bob Dotson, NBC News, Lewisporte, Newfoundland.
What a wonderful story from a terrible day. For more information about the scholarship fund for the students of Lewisporte, Newfoundland, you can log on to our website at today.msnbc.com. That was so nice to see. Anyway.
I had a friend coming from Paris who landed in Newfoundland. He called me 2 days later from there and said, "You won't believe what the people here are doing for us."
Isn't
he was
that
so
amazing?
impressed.
Amazing. Lovely story. Anyway, coming up in our next half hour, children of New York will look back on the events of September 11th.